Hello, property navigators. Today we're embarking on a journey into the future, exploring a topic that's sparking conversations across Australia: the profound impact millennials are expected to have on Australia's property market in the coming decades. As the housing markets in Australia's major cities keep changing and growing, it's crucial to realise that the homes constructed in the past may not meet the needs of our future. Today's discussion is packed with data, expert opinions, and a peek into potential future trends. So why does this even matter? Well, demographics, which is the statistics data that describes populations and their characteristics, will always drive our property market landscapes. As often said, Australia's changing demographics will drive the shape of our housing markets, and these long-term influences will be more important than short-term fluctuations such as interest rates. And because of their sheer size and stage in the life cycle, no generation will shape Australia more during the coming decade than millennials. As a property investor, it's important to understand how changing demographics will alter the requirement for housing moving forward, and it will be equally important to own the type of property that will be in continuous, strong demand by affluent owner-occupiers and even rent-vestors. As we stand on the cusp of a significant generational shift in wealth and property ownership, understanding the dynamics that millennials bring to the table is not just an academic exercise. It's essential for investors, policymakers, and indeed millennials ourselves. Yes, you guessed it, I am indeed a millennial. Understanding millennials. Let's take a moment to first understand who millennials are. As per Birdsford research, this generation, which is also known as Generation Y, are born between 1981 and 1996, and now in 2024 are turning 28 to 43, and they'll be 34 to 49 by the year 2030. Many millennials were mostly born to baby boomers and grew up in their parents' detached houses in the inner, middle, and outer parts of Australia's major cities, which many of their parents still own. Now, millennials have come of age in a world vastly different from that of their parents. They're the first digital natives, having grown up with the internet and mobile technology, and in fact, we grew up with technology at our fingertips for the most part, which has shaped our behaviours, expectations, and lifestyle choices significantly. According to McCrindle research, millennials are more likely to live in a capital city than the generations that went before, are less religious. Just 30% identify their religion as Christianity compared to around 60% of baby boomers, and have accumulated university degrees at a greater rate than any prior generation, and including the associated student debt. Contrary to the stereotypes of being a generation that is focused on lifestyle above work with an intent on delaying adulthood, this generation has now moved into the family years in a big way. Now, for the first 10 years of their family-forming life, millennials have given birth to 3.1 million children compared to their previous generation's contribution of just 2.7 million the decade prior. In addition to family forming and growing the nation, millennials are also funding the nation, bringing along a sleuth of economic power. These mid-20s and early to 40-somethings comprise 34% of the Australian workforce and presumably contribute around a third of our country's income tax as well. They serve in other ways too, like in the Australian Defence Force, where they comprise almost half, 48%, of current serving personnel. So far from being a smashed, avo-loving, fast fashion spending snowflake generation, it turns out that we are contributors, influencers, and leaders. Long since moving from an emerging generation, millennials are now the dominant one. As at the 2021 census, millennials represented the same proportion of the population as baby boomers, both at 21% of the Australian population. This is the first time this has occurred in Australia and presents a large demographic and structural shift in the population, which will flow over into our housing market. Over the next decade, millennials will begin to outnumber baby boomers. Like every other generation before us, millennials are quite different from their baby boomer parents. They tend to get married and have children later in life, travel at an earlier age, switch careers more frequently, and stay in jobs for shorter periods compared to their parents. Millennials are often characterised by the pursuit of work-life balance, and that is a value that transcends into the housing preferences. The data points to favouring flexible living arrangements that accommodate remote work, the value of social and community spaces, and preferring locations that offer a blend of urban convenience with access to nature and recreational activities. Economically, this generation are at a disadvantage compared to previous generations at the same age. Home prices have soared, while wage growth has stagnated, widening the gap between income and the cost of home ownership. Coupled with rising student debt and a fiercely competitive job market, millennials' approach to home ownership is necessarily cautious and calculated. For many, this financial reality has prompted a delay to major life milestones, including purchasing a home, as they prioritise financial security and flexibility over traditional markers of success. But despite these challenges, this generation is slowly but surely making their mark on the property market. Their preferences are starting to influence home designs with a stronger emphasis on sustainability, energy efficiency, and smart home technology. Locations that offer a strong sense of community, access to public transport, and amenities like cafes, shops, and green spaces are particularly appealing. As we look towards the future, it's clear that millennials' impact on the Australian property market will be profound and multifaceted. They're not just passive participants. Their values and preferences are actively shaping the market, pushing it towards more diverse, sustainable, inclusive, and flexible housing solutions. So let's unpack all this in a bit more detail. Millennial buying power. While millennials have faced economic challenges, their buying power is a force that's gradually reshaping the property market. As this generation matures, their financial situation improves through the life cycle, through career advancement, especially for those that have now been in the workforce at a professional capacity for 2 decades or more, using all those degrees we spoke about earlier. In their recent report, research firm Charter Keck Cramer noted that many millennials have over the last decade been price and product takers, given that they have not yet reached peak earning capacity in their careers. Due to this, many millennials have been displaced from the middle rings of their capital cities because there is an absence of suitable housing choices at price points and weekly rents that meet their financial and lifestyle needs. It is also important to understand that according to the most recent 2021 ABS statistics, a large percentage of millennials rent the dwelling in which they are living, with 53% in Sydney, 44% in Melbourne, and 47% in Brisbane. Now, the stats further show that over the last 15 years, a much larger percentage are also now living in high-rise apartments with 4 or more levels, 27 up from 12% in Sydney, 12% up from 3% in Melbourne, and 9% up from 2% in Brisbane. CKC also noted that for many millennials, renting as well as living in either a townhouse or an apartment is a forced choice, as they have simply been priced out of housing markets across many of the capital cities, in particular Sydney and Melbourne. But over the coming decades, much of this may change as millennials reach their peak earning capacity and take over senior roles as older generations retire, and rightly so, being the generation that's accumulated uni degrees at the highest rate in our history. Another major factor is through inheritance. The largest transfer of wealth in Australia's history is happening right now and will continue to happen over the coming decades as baby boomer parents pass down the huge amounts of wealth to predominantly their millennial heirs. Give that a quick Google and it'll blow your mind. A 2021 Australian Government Productivity Commission report estimated that around $3.5 trillion in assets will be transferred in Australia alone by 2050. Life stage. According to leading demographer and director of research at the Demographics Group, Simon Kostenmacher, throughout the 2020s, this generation will follow in the footsteps of every generation before them and enter the family formation and home buying stage. Writing in the Australian newspaper, Kostenmacher says millennials will leave their centrally located 1 and 2 bedroom apartments and migrate to the suburbs or even regional centres in search of more bedrooms and possibly more land. As they move into the family formation stage of their lives, they'll want more space, an additional bedroom or 2 to bring up their kids, and the ability to work from home, at least occasionally. They'll also value their neighbourhood, wanting to live in a 20-minute neighbourhood where everything is within a short walk, drive or cycle from their home. However, the way this generation choose to spend their money is markedly different from previous generations, driven by unique preferences and values. What's most relevant here is their different housing preferences. Due to various factors such as affordability constraints and personal choices, millennials have different ideas about where and how they want to live. This will drive the demand for different types of homes across the capital cities in the coming years and decades. Let's dive into some of what these are. When it comes to what millennials want in a home, their preferences are clear and will significantly influence market trends. location remains a top priority, with a strong preference for areas that balance urban convenience with access to nature and community spaces. Now, this preference is not just about the physical location, but properties that align with their values and the lifestyle it affords, and proximity to work, entertainment, and dining options, as well as public transport, nature reserves, and bike paths are also highly valued. In terms of the type of properties, there's a noticeable shift towards smaller, more manageable spaces, such as smaller single-family homes that offer a bit of both worlds, the convenience of city living with the space and privacy of suburban life. This trend reflects millennials' desire for low-maintenance living and the inclination towards sustainability and efficiency. Millennials and housing technology. Now, this is a biggie. The impact of technology on housing preferences is poised to be profound and multifaceted, given this generation are digital natives. As we look towards the future, several key trends emerge, illustrating how technology will continue to shape our living spaces and housing choices. We'll start with smart homes and IoT integration. Smart home technology powered by the Internet of Things, or IoT, is becoming increasingly commonplace, transforming the way we interact with our living environments. Features like voice-controlled assistants, automated lighting, heating and cooling systems, and security devices that can be managed from smartphones are not just conveniences, but are becoming expected components of modern homes. Millennial housing preferences will likely lean towards homes that offer integrated smart systems, enhancing energy efficiency, security, and lifestyle convenience. Sustainable and eco-friendly technologies. Sustainability is a concern among this generation of change makers. Technological advancements in renewable energy sources like solar panels and wind turbines, along with smart thermostats and energy-efficient appliances, are making eco-friendly homes more accessible and desirable. Future housing preferences will prioritize these technologies, not only to reduce environmental impact, but also to decrease long-term living costs. Remote work and its impact. There is little doubt that millennial knowledge workers will be working from home much more regularly into the future. The shift towards remote work, which was accelerated by recent global events, has also given millennials the flexibility to consider living further from city centres. This could lead to a revitalisation of suburban and rural areas, and millennials seeking out affordable properties that don't compromise on space or lifestyle. In turn, this could alleviate some of the demand pressures on major urban centres. And lastly, we have buying options. Millennials are increasingly looking to alternative financing options such as rent-to-own schemes and co-ownership models. However, from an investment standpoint, we generally don't recommend relying on these products or schemes, as there are other options out there that might be better suited to our current times. You might have heard of RentVesting. Now, this is a huge concept that has taken over in recent times, and it works when generally millennials want to buy right now with what they can afford, rather than waiting until later when they reach peak earning capacity and maybe get their inheritance. We have a whole video about this, and you can check it out, and our link's down in the description. If you are an investor right now, conversely, by understanding that RentVestors exist and some really high paid professionals do this by choice, may help you ensure that you obtain tenants who are more affluent and renting for lifestyle reasons rather than because they can't afford to own properties. In fact, it's very much the opposite. Many millennials can afford to pay high rents in beautiful but expensive properties to live exactly where they want, while they invest in markets far away that they can actually afford to buy into right now. We do it for clients all the time, and it really is the best for both worlds. CKC Advisory have pointed out that changes in millennials' financial circumstances and lifestyles over the coming decade or more, such as what we've spoken about earlier, will continue to drive demand for dwellings in our city's middle rings, closer to some of the best schools, hospitals, and amenities and lifestyle areas. In my view, millennials will either be purchasing such properties via the wealth created through this stage of life, or this will be a perfect opportunity for millennial RentVesting, so parents can live exactly where they may need to for their schools, education in the right catchments, etc. Or single people can live exactly where they want even when they can't afford to buy there, but they can still invest and get in the market where they can afford to do so. There you have it, property navigators. A bit of a rundown on how millennials may very well impact Australia's property market into the future. Check out our video all about RentVesting here on screen now, and you'll see exactly what I was just talking about. Until next time, happy property navigating.